It's not Michigan, it's not Ohio State, but it's a state college, and Michigan's excited for it as we welcome in Anthony Bellino. You see him every morning here on BCSN, the X's and Bros Show. Anthony, thank you for joining us tonight.
Always good to see you, Mark. Thank you for having me. Excited. You can't be 7-0 if you don't go 6-0.
Before we get to the opportunity to get to 7-0, let's talk about how they got to 6-0, beating Indiana. Sluggish first half, poured it on in the second half. Is that a fair assessment, or is there more to that game than just that?
I think that's a fair assessment, but what I think, and I also think the AP voters missed on this in the top 25 as well. With Mike Hart going down on the sidelines in early on in that football game, I think with his medical emergency, now Fox reported it was a seizure, still kind of waiting to see what the final word is from the university, but it definitely had an impact. The team looked much different. The players looked much different. They looked out of sync. They looked out of sorts. You could see the concern on their face on the sidelines, and they couldn't get the halftime quick enough. And I think that this is one of those moments in football and throughout the course of a college football season where when you realize how much these guys, the head coaches, are paid, this is why they are paid the way that they are. You're not just a football coach, you're a counselor, you are a disciplinarian, you're a father figure, you're a shoulder to lean on, your ears to listen. There are so many different roles that college coaches play while not just only coaching football and worried about the outcomes on Saturdays. I think we saw a good glimpse of that in the first half. They get into halftime, they're tied 10-10, and then whatever was said at halftime, however they worked their way through it, as we're getting information on television, we don't know what the sideline knows at that point. All they know is that their coach just passed out on the sidelines. What they once again they said was a seizure. He's taken off the field in a cart. Like, it's not a good situation. It seemed like what was said at halftime really had this group buckled down and focused for a much more dominant second half. A second half that looked like Michigan football. They outscore Indiana 21-10 in that half, and I think that this was probably the most balanced football game we've seen to date.
And I think what we also have seen throughout the season, particularly in the Big Ten, is we've seen Michigan get off to a great start, opening series, scoring points, struggling a little bit then the rest of the half, but then that second half so strong. I think that really points to how well they're prepared for starts of games, but then they do have to make those adjustments at halftime.
Yeah, and it's all about counterpunching, right? And the more that you can, dissect and digest what's taking place in the field, the faster you can make those adjustments to try to, Indiana running a lot of that quick screen, that bubble screen sort of offense where they're getting the ball to their playmakers out in space. That's what they wanted to do. They did a good job of that the first half. Michigan adjusting to that in the second half. Indiana being forced to go away from that. That was a positive. And at the end of the day, when you have a guy like Blake Corum, old reliable back there, Mr. Old Faithful himself, 25 carries, 124 yards, and a touchdown, including that 50-yard scamper that was awesome. He gives you that sort of sense of calm while J.J. McCarthy's still getting his feet wet in Big Ten play. They are going to get tested. It is going to happen. When it happens, how it happens, whether it was, Maryland a little bit early on, Indiana early on in this football game, maybe it's Penn State this upcoming week. They're going to get tested to where J.J. McCarthy's going to have to be that calm in the storm. He had a nice game as well. I mentioned the word balance. They had 40 carries, 36 passing attempts. That's the sort of balance that this offense can really lean on, and they can kind of lure you to sleep with the run game and Blake Corum, and then boom, beat you over the top, which is that explosive downfield passing game that most Michigan fans are still waiting to kind of see.
Penn State comes to Ann Arbor. Jim Harbaugh called it the biggest challenge of the season so far. An undefeated Nittany Lion team, but really, who have they beaten? Yeah, they looked pretty good against Auburn, but Auburn's 3-3 this season. Not necessarily a fantastic victory there. They haven't really blown anybody out. I have not been impressed by Penn State yet.
Yeah, I think Penn State, ranked at number 10 is just there because we don't really know who else to rank, right? I mean, at this point, and I get it, right? Because the conversation I keep hearing is, well, Michigan hasn't played anyone, they haven't beaten anyone. Well, you can only beat the teams that are on your schedule, right? And if you look at Penn State, if you look at Ohio State, who just played their first road game of the season, that was a big point of contention for Michigan to start the year. Didn't hear a whole lot about that with Ohio State. With Penn State coming in, it seems to be that sort of, well, if Michigan beats Penn State, well, Penn State wasn't that good anyways, right? We know that conversation is going to be had, and it's going to be all about Ohio State at the end of the year. But you're right, Penn State, who have they beat? They beat Purdue in a tightly contested game in week number 1. They blew out Ohio. They went down to Auburn. Auburn's not very good. They beat Central Michigan. They dominated Northwestern. We don't really know exactly what Penn State and James Franklin are. We know that they're, because of the NFL draft and some of the talent that they've lost on both sides of the football in recent years. They're a much different team this year. I think that, they do have some experience there at quarterback, which is a huge positive for Penn State because it's a road game. With Clifford there, under center, he's a guy that's played in these sorts of environments. It's a noon kickoff. I think that helps Penn State. The Mays out, I think that helps Michigan. We'll see if they wear the all blue unis. But Penn State's an offense that's been putting up yards and points in bunches. The question is, have they faced a defense, which they haven't, in Michigan? How will Penn State sort of respond and adjust to what Michigan's going to bring? Now with 22 sacks so far on the season. Remember last year, Ajabo and Hutchinson, 14 and 11 respectively in the sack column, but only 34 as a team. They've gotten 22 through 6 games. They're generating that pressure that you need to have. Mike Morris has been an absolute beast. Mozzie Smith, Oki has been fantastic. So they've got the pressure. If they can get to Clifford early, they can get to him often. They're going to win this football game.
Finally, Penn State's going to be playing with some revenge on their mind. Michigan's very excited about having this Mays out. Emotion is a dangerous thing. You want to be emotional getting into the game, but once that whistle starts, you don't want to necessarily be playing with emotion. How big of a factor will that be on Saturday?
Well, I think that the Ann Arbor crowd, hopefully provides, when we're there on Saturday, hopefully it provides a great atmosphere. That place can get loud. You want it to be loud. You want Penn State to get caught up in all the ruckus and everything else that's not happening on the football field. For Michigan, it's just business as usual, right? It's a noon game. It's almost like it's part of the schedule. The Lions are going to play 1 o'clock on Fox on Sunday, right? We know that. We know that Michigan's going to play at noon on Saturday on Fox. So it's nice. I think that that same consistency in the schedule really does favor the Wolverines here. It's routine, and we are creatures of habit. They know what the drill is. They just got to go out there and they have to perform, and they have to limit Penn State's offense, which, as I said, they're putting up a ton of yards. They're scoring about 35 points a game. Can Michigan's defense have something to say about that?
Wolverines off to a 6-0 start for the second year in a row. First time they've done that since 76-77. We'll see if they can get to 7-0 on Saturday. I want to thank our guest, Anthony Bellino from X's and Bros Show. He's as busy as James Brown ever was in his prime. Anthony, thank you very much.
Mark, my friend, thank you, partner. Go Blue.